English Planet. Appunti di inglese, a cura di Nicholas Youldon.
Good evening everybody and welcome to another edition of English Planet, part of the webcasting vision of Radio Dreamland, which is trying to not only resolve problems with English for non-native speakers, but also to promote an eco-spiritual approach to living on our planet in this world. As usual, you're listening to the voice of your presenter and English teacher, Nick Youldon. In my last lesson, I explained to you how to make comparisons between two things, two people, or two situations. For example, Oliver Hardy was fatter than Stan Laurel. My banana is bigger than your apple. You remember these were comparisons. On the same lines, this week, or in this lesson, I would like to speak about superlatives. Superlatives means anything from comparing more than two things, that means 3 things, 4 things, 5 things, up to comparing one thing with all other things, absolute superlatives. To use an example from our last lesson, we said America is bigger than Italy. If we want to continue on this comparison, America is bigger than Italy, but China is the biggest of the 3. Now, pay attention here because it's the linguistic construction which makes the comparison for us. Using the construction, the structure for comparison, I say Sweden is colder than Italy. But I can also compare Sweden to more countries than just Italy in the same way. I can say Sweden is colder than Italy, Greece and Spain. In this way I compare one country to 3 countries using the same structure for comparison and using the same adjectival comparison form. Cold, colder, big, bigger, small, smaller, etc. But if I want to illustrate or indicate Sweden as a particular example of a cold country among a group of other countries, I have to use a different structure. Now I say Sweden, Italy, Greece and Spain are 4 countries. Of these 4 countries, Sweden is the coldest. I can also say Juventus, Barcelona, Milan and Roma are good football teams, but Manchester United is the best. In these examples I am indicating or setting apart in one case one country as distinct from a group of other countries. In the second case, one football team as distinct from a group of other football teams. I am in effect using a superlative form because one of the group is distinct from the rest of the group. Therefore, I don't say Sweden is colder, I say it is the coldest. I don't say Manchester United is better, I say Manchester United is the best. This should be familiar because it corresponds in Italian to il più freddo oppure il più forte. As you can see, there are no structural obstacles to creating this structure for using superlatives. To change the adjective from a normal adjective to a superlative, it's sufficient to add a suffix est, and then to use the definite article before the adjective. The biggest thing, the best thing, the hardest thing, big, bigger, biggest, good, better, best. I confess that this adjective is irregular, but it is so familiar to the whole damn world that I don't think there is any difficulty understanding it. Hard, harder, hardest. The hardest thing in English is the pronunciation. Obviously here I'm illustrating the rule for short or monosyllabic adjectives. For the longer adjectives, as previously mentioned in comparisons, we have to use a different word. The most difficult, the most intelligent, the most wonderful. The most wonderful experience is to visit the stone circle at Dreamland. Wonderful meaning meraviglioso, in case you don't know this word. While we're on the subject of superlatives, I want to express a difficulty that I have, a problem that I have with the Italian language. I don't wish to offend the Italian state or millions of Italian patriots, but I do have to make a criticism of the Italian language, at least from my point of view. The problem is with superlatives exactly. Because we frequently use superlatives not to simply compare different things, but to express emotional reactions to things. When I see a brand new bright red Ferrari passing in Corso Casale in Turin, I feel an emotion, I say to myself, that is absolutely beautiful. Now, I don't actually mean to say that that is an absolute, that the beauty of the Ferrari is the most beautiful thing in the world or the universe. But this Ferrari has created an emotion inside of me, and I look for a linguistic expression for my emotion, and in English it comes out, it is expressed as, that is an absolutely beautiful car. To be honest, I honestly do not have this opinion or emotion about Ferraris or any other car in the street, but I am using this as a linguistic example only. But what is my problem with the Italian language? Well, honestly, it's not a real problem, but what Italians generally do for superlatives is they use issimo. The Ferrari is bellissima, is velocissima, is costosissima. Obviously, using issimo for 50-odd million Italians, it is sufficient release of emotion. But the lesson is that in English we use a slightly different system. Rather than have one single form to express our superlative emotions, we use different possibilities. One of those possibilities is to use the adverb absolutely, as I have just illustrated. That is absolutely beautiful. That is absolutely wonderful. That is absolutely incredible. Saying absolutely with a heavy accent is similar in Italian to saying issimo. Another softer option in English is the word really. That's a really interesting book. That was a really good film last night. We had a really good meal in that new vegan restaurant. The pasta there was really delicious. Let's say that really is a basic form, a starter form. By the way, we real European English people, true English, use the correct adverbial form really. Our somewhat different American cousins use a simplified form, real. That's real good, that's real trash, that's real interesting. No comment, I don't wish to be politically incorrect. It's a linguistic fact of life. But real or really is a basic, a go-to word for adverb, that is for making adjectives into superlatives, for giving extra expression, extra emotion to your comments and your life, in fact. But life becomes boring if things are always described as really good, really interesting, really top class, really this or really that. Absolutely is stronger in real terms, but also in terms of onomatopoeia, because we can really put expression on absolutely. That was absolutely wonderful. Giancarlo Barbadoro's book on alien intelligence is absolutely fascinating. Rosalba Natero has an absolutely enchanting voice. There are many other options available to stop your comments being simple and boring. Many of these are idiosyncratic and typical characteristic of English people. I can give you a list of, for example, extremely, incredibly, awfully, tremendously. It's strange that the adjective awful usually has the meaning of, let's say in Italian, schifoso, terribile, oppure molto cattivo. Ad esempio, he is an awful person, means una persona molto cattiva, cioè una persona orribile. But it changes its meaning to the opposite when it is used as an adverb to modify another adjective. He is an awfully nice person. An awfully nice person in realtà è una persona molto gentile, stranamente. Look at this. It is tremendously difficult to drink a cup of tea standing on your head. I repeat that because it is a little unusual. It's tremendously difficult to drink a cup of tea standing on your head. Qui tremendously difficult significa solo molto difficile oppure difficilissimo. Tremendous and tremendously come from the adjective in Italian tremendo, which means generally something terrible, something which is frightening, something which makes you tremble with fear, cioè fa tremare di paura. But in our context of superlatives, the word is used simply to indicate a level of intensity for a particular adjective. As an example, I can say traveling around the world today is extremely expensive, is awfully expensive, is tremendously expensive, is incredibly expensive. And they all mean the same thing. They are just an expression of a level of intensity, referring to cost or expense in this particular case. Now, it's awfully difficult for me to contain my emotive expressions, but I absolutely must stop the lesson at this point for some advertising and official announcements. However, stay tuned because I will be back very shortly with a little conversation from the world of the invisible. Be back soon.
Radio Dreamland. Share the vision.
Radio Dreamland, la voce dell'ecospiritualità. Seguiteci su Facebook, Instagram, Twitter e YouTube per essere aggiornati su tutte le nostre novità. www.radiodreamland.it.
Meditazione planetaria del martedì. Radio Dreamland si unisce all'iniziativa della meditazione planetaria del martedì sera, organizzata dal New Earth Circle. Ogni martedì sera, alle 21, vi invitiamo a partecipare alla meditazione planetaria dedicata a Madre Terra e a tutti i suoi figli di qualsiasi specie. Ognuno può unirsi al cerchio planetario dei meditanti, partecipando da soli o con i propri cari, per una testimonianza di pace e di spiritualità che abbracci tutto il pianeta, per un atto d'amore verso Madre Terra, per un mondo antispecista. Unitevi con noi in meditazione, seguendo la Nassinar, la musica del vuoto eseguita al flauto da Giancarlo Barbadoro. Ogni martedì alle 21. Per informazioni www.newearthcircle.org.
Radio Dreamland. Share the vision.
Okay, back to business. You're still listening to Radio Dreamland, eco-spiritual webcasting, and the program is English Planet. English lessons from an English teacher in Piedmont, northern Italy. Just for a moment, I want to delve into the world of the invisible, the world of the unmentionable, the unspeakable. And I want to refer once again to dragons, which were the subject of my program last week. I want to talk again about dragons because I have a connection here from the city where I was born, which is Exeter in England, and I made a discovery a couple of years ago, in fact, but it was revived recently. I made a discovery that in Exeter there is a river, and there is also a rowing club on that river, which is involved in a sport which is known as dragon boat racing. Dragon boat racing is a sport which is mainly practiced in China, which is logical because we all know that the dragon is a figure which is part of the fabric of society in China. The figure of the dragon is very positive and very important for the Chinese people. But why this sport has extended outside of the regions of China is a bit more difficult to explain. A brief explanation about the sport is that it's a team sport using a boat, which is a rowing or paddling boat, similar to a canoe. Which has the head of a dragon at the front of the boat and the tail of the dragon at the rear of the boat. Okay. Now, one other interesting fact about this boat is that there are 22 people on board the boat. Apart from the symbolic figure of the dragon, the number of 22 is an important symbolic figure in many of the esotericisms around the world, including Celtic European esotericisms. So I find it curious and interesting that this is a sport using a legendary mystical figure and a mystical number of people. The 22 people are composed of 20 people who row, who paddle the boat, one person who gives the direction to the boat, who steers the boat, and one other person who has a drum, whose purpose is to beat the rhythm for the people who are paddling the boat. And so we have a total of 22. This is effectively the traditional correct number of persons on board the boat. Now, note that this is an unusual form of aquatic sports. There are many different sports in the world involving boats. They are frequently seen on television and in Olympic sports, for example. But very, very little is ever spoken about dragon boat racing. The curious fact is that although people don't talk about it, it seems that this form of boat racing is becoming more and more popular in Europe and is in fact well known around the world, or well participated in around the world. A kind of invisible sport which involves, however, a lot of people. If you look on internet, you will find that there is a dragon boat association in Italy, and probably there may well be a dragon boat racing team in Turin, although I've never seen it myself. I mention this sport here as a curiosity, to pose a question rather than to present answers. My question, or the question, is why is a figure such as the dragon, which is a mythical, legendary creature associated, at least in our modern society, with evil and danger and threatening behavior and fire breathing and destruction. Why is this figure used for a pleasure sport, for leisure, for a sport which helps people to feel good and be healthy and feel better? In other words, an activity with a beneficial and positive effect on people. My personal feeling is that the existence or non-existence of dragons is part of some, or has some deep significance within human experience, and is something which we should pay attention to and not ignore or turn a blind eye as required by our modern society. It cannot be a simple coincidence that the dragon is a creature often or inevitably associated with the creation, supply of fire. It's also no coincidence that fire is of fundamental importance to human beings in survival on this planet. Fire is a form of heat and energy without which we cannot survive, and part of the success of human survival on this planet is due to the fact that we can control fire, or at least to some extent. Therefore, the dragon, the creature of the dragon, should be a symbol of good, of benefit to human beings. If we go and speak to my Celtic cousins in Wales, Great Britain, the nation of Wales uses the red dragon as a national symbol, and the legendary history of the birth of Wales speaks of a fight between two dragons, no less, a white dragon and a red dragon. The victor of the fight was the red dragon, which created the nation of Wales, and is therefore a symbol of good. In other words, the victory of good over bad, the triumph of good over evil. So, apparently, a lot of people around the world seem to believe in dragons, and dragons seem to play at least some part in their lives. I'm not here. My purpose is not to promote this particular sport, but I am interested in the fact that this is a sport which does not encourage people to engage in conflictual activities, in warfare or destruction or evil in any way. It's a good, healthy sport with social activity where you are part of a team, and what is of most interest to me is that it seems to focus on, reflect on, or encourage in some way an ancient tradition and an ancient traditional creature, let's say legendary, mythical, but an important part maybe of human experience. An important part of the dream of Radio Dreamland, the vision and the mission of Radio Dreamland and its founder Giancarlo Barbadoro is the appreciation, protection and continuity of ancient traditions, which form an important component of our identity and our human experience in relationship to existence within nature. Even if you don't want to indulge in dragon boat racing, do a little research into the existence and history and significance of dragons. Or maybe visit Wales and speak to the Welsh people about dragons and about some of their other wonderful traditions and the kind of life that they live in a beautiful little country known as Wales, Great Britain. On the subject of visits, I would just like to relate, to mention one of the more impressive visits which I have made during my life. I'm a strange, as I said, an eccentric person, a strange person, but I have, during my life, found myself more or less by accident or destiny in a range of different experiences, places, situations, etc., which have left a good feeling, a beneficial effect on my life in general. For some reason, I found that without really intending to visit a particular place or a particular experience, I somehow find myself in those places or in those situations or experiences, and they have always been extremely enjoyable. One of my most memorable visits was to the country of Peru. Many years ago, my dear wife convinced me to go to Peru for a visit. I was intrigued by the idea and the idea of visiting one of the ancient marvels of Machu Picchu, for example. Also, following the suggestions, the research of Giancarlo Barbadoro, Rosalba Natero, who informed me about the strange phenomena of the so-called candelabra on an island off the coast of Peru. One of those kind of carvings in the ground which can be seen around the world, are also seen in England in the form of horses, for example, carved on the ground. This one was a candelabra. During the visit, we did, of course, take a short trip on an inflatable boat on the Pacific to view the candelabra, which is carved in the ground, actually on the hill of an island just off the coast of Peru. This was obviously a remarkable experience, something which remains in your memory. But more than this, the whole visit to Peru was an incredible journey through also imagery of magic of ancient traditions, lost cities, marvelous things which cannot exist and yet do exist, populations which maintain their old traditions and costumes. Unexpectedly and without any personal planning, I found myself submerged on arrival at an altitude of 3,000 meters, I think, 3,000 meters, in Cusco, in the Andes. It was right in the middle of the festivals of what is known as Inti Raymi, which is the ancient Incan civilization festival, an incredible festival which went on for 2 or 3 days over a complete weekend. Apart from the altitude itself, the whole festival simply took your breath away, as they say in English. But then, over a 3-week period, we visited something like about 20 different sites and experiences, including several situations where there were ancient megalithic buildings or structures, blocks of stone, for example, including Machu Picchu, Sacsayhuaman, and the ancient city of Cusco itself. There was a visit to a small museum in the town of Ica, where Professor Cabrera kept his collection of incredible stones of Ica, which are small stones collected from the mountains somewhere with unusual, impossible images inscribed upon them. Nearby, in another town, there was a museum with skulls and mummies, unusual, apparently alien skulls, an incredible collection of mystifying materials. In the same area, there was a flight with a small plane, a light plane, over the lines of Nazca. Peru is literally full of the images and situations from what we can call the invisible world, things which are unexplainable, impossible, but they're all there. And they seem to be largely concentrated in Peru for some reason. But time is running short, but I did want to mention the fact of one curious coincidence. During this visit to Peru, we went to the area near Lake Titicaca and Tiwanaku, which was the basis of the ancient civilization of the Tiwanaku people. At that time, we were taken by we had a private guide and a small bus, and we were taken to visit a site which the guide told us had only recently been discovered, and was part of the legend of the local people, which referred to a kind of gate or gateway to the stars, or a gateway on time, where people were presumed to have been lost, to have walked through the rock face, through an apparent doorway in the rock face, and to disappear forever. Now, this site, this gateway, this portal, this monument has been dealt with recently on Radio Dreamland by my colleague Marco Pulieri, who has explained the extreme importance of the significance of this particular monument. And I just find it strange that I visited this place so many years ago, and now my colleague here on the radio is talking about it, describing it, and giving full details. But all I can do is give testimony to the fact that visiting this place, it left a very, very strange experience, a very, very strange feeling inside of me, which I have never forgotten, and I probably never will for the rest of my life. A visit to Peru effectively is a complete spiritual experience, something which really as many people as possible should be able to enjoy, if not physically, then virtually. I could go on much longer about the strange experience of finding yourself in an invisible world, but time has invisibly run out, unfortunately. I have to close now. Remember to stay tuned to Radio Dreamland webcasting on www.radiodreamland.it. This is, for the moment, this is Nick Youldon, wishing you a very good evening. Remember to tune in next week and look for English Planet, and in the meantime, Share the vision.